Studies show that, on average, teens spend 4 to 5 hours per day on social media. That suggests a lot of data flying around, much of it on open networks. In a digitalized world, protecting data and privacy is a joint effort. Yconic wants you to know what keys you hold and what safeguards others are required to put in place for you. Two key things are critical to know when using Yconic and to keep in mind when on other sites or platforms. First, Yconic wants kids to get to know each other and collaborate on projects. For that, it's helpful to create a profile and tell others about yourself. Or you can opt to use a persona, a character that represents you. Just keep in mind that every bit of information you input, name, email address, etc., generates data. Often, the bigger question is, who is collecting that data? In this case, it is Yconic partners. More about that later. Because Yconic respects your privacy, it collects the bare minimum of data needed for a very specific purpose: to track your learning progress. You should also remember two key terms. Informally, anyone who opens an account on Yconic becomes a registered user. In relevant data protection and policy protocol documents, they can also be referred to as data subjects. As a data generator, you are best placed to take measures to protect yourself and avoid having others access and use your data. But recent laws also place substantial responsibility on data collectors, especially when they are creating content for and collecting data from minors. The rest of this video explains the links between data generation and collection, as well as who will have access to what and for what purposes. Your data is hugely valuable to people who try to collect it. And across many hours and endless platforms, it's easy to lose track of keys that could keep it safe. The most important thing is to avoid oversharing by walking right through the door without making any active choices. Most sites make grab it all the default option. Get smart and opt out before clicking through. Being online creates data risks. In line with its obligations, Yconic has taken steps to minimize risks for its users. We've also identified different types of risks and the kinds of impacts they may have if Yconic gets hacked. Some could have personal impacts, such as damaging a user's reputation or causing psychological distress. Others may have legal implications or lead to financial loss. If Yconic were ever to experience a data breach, its social contract with its users would be broken. For these reasons, we encourage users to be aware of relevant policies and terms of use. As we walk you through where you will generate data on the platform, Yconic wants you to know the level of risk if a breach occurred, as well as how we would respond. A single X indicates very low risk. Also, even if a breach were to occur, it would have minimal or no negative impact for users. 2 X's means Yconic and its users might be inconvenienced in some minor way, but Yconic partners would have no trouble getting things back on track quickly. Where a rating of 3 X's is shown, it suggests a breach could have high impacts for many or all users and for Yconic itself. Urgent action is needed to minimize the damage. And finally, a 4X risk is severe, indicating potential for widespread harm. The moment you opt to register on Yconic, you begin generating data. Here, Yconic collects 4 basic types of information: a username, which may be your real name or something else you choose, your email address, which does need to be active, your real name, which we do need, and any other details you decide to input. At 3 X's, the risk rating is quite high here. If someone were to hack Yconic's registration database, having access to this data set would put many or all users at substantial risk. Yconic would have to move quickly to minimize the impacts. Once on the platform, the second step of the registration process collects email again, along with country and school. The risk rating is lower as there are fewer personal and identifiable data, such as users' real names. The system also automatically collects information about the date and time you registered. As this is not directly linked to more personal data, the risk ranking is low. Cookies are everywhere in the digital world. In fact, there are so many, it's easy to get cookie fatigue. But guess what? When you click Accept All Cookies, you are giving permission for data collectors to install digital trackers on your devices. In turn, the trackers analyze how you are using the platforms. Over time, the cookies scattered across your devices help data collectors get to know your interests and your likely behaviors. That's how sending text messages about a certain brand of shoes turns into a flood of advertising from the shoemaker on your social media feeds. Do you see how the risk rating linked to cookies consent can quickly escalate to 3x's? FYI, to get the full benefits of the platform, you do need to accept Yconic cookies. But the system is set up to collect only the data needed to keep the platform running smoothly. And Yconic will never share your data with any third parties who are not project partners. User Preferences is another place where you generate data. Indicating your gender preference, for example, can help Yconic adjust language to be neutral. Risks here are low and manageable. Yconic needs users to confirm their email addresses so we can send information and updates. Again, low risk. Yconic embeds into its articles a mix of questions, quizzes, and other boxes where you can add content. We do it for two reasons. First, we want to know what interests you and keep track of what you are learning. Second, we want to give you a chance to have your say, whether to express your opinions, add details, or ask more questions. As long as you stay on topic, the risk rating here remains low. Finally, Yconic lets all users talk to each other by adding comments or starting conversation threads. This is a good place to be chatty but cautious. Because all other users will be able to see what you added, it's best to avoid getting too personal. And again, if Yconic were to get hacked, the risk of others getting access to your personal data would be quite high. By the way, if Yconic monitors come across content we think could put you at risk, we will notify you and suggest that you adjust or remove it. So, back to the question of who has access to your data and what they will use it for on Yconic. First, Act 4, which is linked to the logo Enact, is the data controller. This means it is responsible for protecting your data and privacy in relation to the EU General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR. You'll learn more about that in the Yconic articles on digitalization. Act 4 is obliged to store your data securely and to set up data protection agreements with all other parties on the project. It also has to manage risks and notify users of potential impacts. On behalf of Act 4, two German entities, Energipedia and Hetzner, act as data processors. As they have developed the Yconic platform and host its servers, your data passes through their systems. Also, Act 4 has given them, through a data processing agreement, authority to manage some aspects of managing data on the platform. In providing platform services, they must also prevent its misuse. As the platform is designed to promote communication among users, they also need to set up relevant safeguards for this activity. Finally, they also distribute updates and information. Finally, two additional Yconic partners are data processors in a very different sense. Engineers Without Borders in Spain and FSR Global in India will use collected data to analyze gaps in knowledge among Yconic users and to track their learning progress. As the data controller, it is Act 4's responsibility to protect your data when making it available to these processors. Act 4 does this by anonymizing it, which means removing all personal data, and aggregating it, which means they get bulk data they can analyze for trends without knowing who contributed what. A good example is the gender information under User Preferences. These processors will be able to see that, overall, for a given question, males, females, and gender-neutral people submitted different responses, but they will have no idea who submitted what answers or how individual users self-identified during the registration process. Hope it was helpful to learn about privacy and data protection on Yconic. Don't forget that you can have your say by using the Talk section of the platform.